Welcome to New Filmmakers Los Angeles in partnership with Movie Maker magazine. I'm Carolyn McDonald and I'm here to talk to Sean Kim about his film Gale. Let's take a look at a clip. Sean, welcome.
Hi.
How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. So tell us, what was the inspiration for your film Gale? It's a really wonderful movie.
Well, this was my thesis project for university, and it
Mm-hmm.
really started with a really simple image, which was a creature with a weather vane for a head.
Mm.
And I had this sort of idea, and I had a very strong image of the space that surrounded it. And I knew that there was something there, and I just wanted to flesh that out and really develop it. So it really started with an image
With
first.
one singular image.
Yeah.
Was it an artist that you were a fan of?
You know what? This was part of an ongoing development process that I was doing prior to my thesis project. I was
Mm-hmm.
trying to come up with ideas. I was doing sketches and
Mm-hmm.
design plans. And what I ended up with was this sort of monster with a weather vane for a head. And I wasn't quite sure yet, whether this would be a benevolent monster or an evil monster.
Mm.
But something started to really begin to kind of domino into a clear idea once I started to flesh that image out.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, it only became a matter of turning that into the story we have now.
Mm-hmm. And so tell me, with this creature that you had here, was there a specific archetype that you were trying to portray or a theme that you wanted to represent with?
I think most commonly the archetype you'd attach to a character like Gale is maybe the gentle giant.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's one of the most powerful, mostly because a gentle giant oftentimes is not the one enacting change.
Mm-hmm.
The world changes around them.
Mm-hmm.
And that was sort of the basis of the story.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted to tell a story in which many people's lives were touched
Mm-hmm.
by the presence of this creature in their lives, and especially our main character, Grant.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And because, when it came to life and people were so kind to it, but then the incident where they wanted to hold on to it. Can you talk about that part of the story, just where, the gentle giant, sought its freedom when they
Right.
found sentience, and talk about that element of the village, the people
For
in
sure.
this.
I see the sort of push and pull between the village and Gale as sort of a larger story, and really the core theme of learning to love something, but also learning to let it go.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that in and of itself has many sort of sub themes that you could sort of attach to it. But really at the core, we're telling a story about a lonely old woman and the rest of her village find something, good in their lives, and learning, one, to not be afraid of it, but then afterwards learning that things have to continue to change. And
Mm-hmm.
in that sort of way, when Gail decides that it's time for her to leave the village,
Mm-hmm.
leave the coop, the village has to sort of negotiate with what that means.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. And talk a little bit more about the world. What was there inspiration? You said it was a photograph, but as you built the world out of this village, did you have anything that inspired you? Any place specifically that inspired you?
Yeah, actually, it was even more of a mental image than it was a physical one, and that mental image was largely my mother's hometown in Portugal. It is a very small town in the middle of a large valley. It's very isolated and sort of cut off from the rest of the world. And it was really rewarding to get to pull from my cultural roots and the time that I've spent there and sort of infuse that into once again, this image of a creature, of a gentle giant that I had kicking around. And so they just felt like a perfect match.
Mm-hmm.
And once those two were together, it almost felt natural that the rest of the story sort of unfolded the way it did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. I could see that feel. It does have that European
Yeah.
feel to it. Yeah, really, really beautiful.
Thank you.
one thing at the very beginning of the film, there was a delivery or a pickup and talking about that world, and it started out like it was going to go one direction, and then it took another turn before the storm or until the storm. What was that moment? Those men, what did they represent that came in?
So at the very beginning of the film, you see some soldiers come to pick up materials from a factory within the village, and this was something that was, a big contention. We were in the script writing process. Do we keep this in? Does it distract too far away? And my core reasoning was that there is some war happening outside of the village. And while we don't see that war, we don't get to be a part of that war, I think it's important that your setting, just like any of your other characters, has really a life of its own. And I think what we see there is we establish a context for why the villagers are in a state of hesitancy, state of fear, and why Gail sort of represents something scary, but an important change that wouldn't normally occur otherwise.
Yeah, and it makes sense now because when Gail comes to life and starts to help them, rebuild, and that they didn't want to let it go because of that war. That really makes sense now.
Yeah, there's sort of a fear and a collective fear, most importantly, and so that also furthered our theme of, as a group, learning to love something. We're obviously focusing on grand story of learning to love, but the way that reflects on the rest of the village is also important because it's a collective, and I think that's also something that in many ways we can all relate to.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. So the scripting process for getting this all down on paper, what was that like? How long did it take you to get the script done?
This was, once again, part of our thesis project. So we really only had the fall to develop the script. We are expected in our university program in Toronto to show up on the first day with a second, third draft of your script. And then from there, you go into a pitching process. And so it was a very intensive few months where we were really working to not only develop the story into a place that we were really happy with, but develop the story into a place that was also feasible for an animated project. We knew that we probably wouldn't be able to go any further than 6 minutes worth of actual animation. And so, as the rule of thumb goes, we couldn't go more than 6 pages. And so it was a matter of honing it down and keeping it nice and cohesive without losing the foundational aspects that were really important to myself and to my producer, that were the core of the story.
Right, nice. So once you got the script done, what was the production process like for the getting it down and put together?
Right. It was kind of difficult because our program is primarily a live action program. We were the only animated film of our thesis here, and so we were really beginning a process much different from the rest of our peers, and that was doing a lot of research, establishing a lot of schedules that were really unconventional to the rest of the process. For example, and was primarily, you have to create an animated storyboard, also known as an animatic, and that had to be locked before production began. And so over the course of late fall into early winter, we were working really hard to lay out that animatic because it not only represents the basis and the foundation for the rest of the film, but in a sort of way, it's your pitch to the rest of the world when you're trying to find team members. We were almost essentially a fully remote crew animation-wise. And so we had people, of course, from the Greater Toronto area, but we had people from 4 other continents helping us out. And we were so fortunate to have them because although there are challenges in working remotely, especially over time zones, there was something very rewarding about getting to collaborate with people from around the world.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. So how large of a team was it, and where were these people located?
We had a team by the end around 80 to 90.
Wow.
And this is, of course, including not only our animation team, but our music and sound team, as well as our local team that was doing editing, writing, and producing. Most notably of which we have a very close friend of mine, Pablo Flores, who assembled the orchestra to play our score,
Wow.
written by Wyatt Garvin. And so these two friends of mine, close friends from high school, they worked together to assemble a team in Montreal. So they were, only a few hours ahead, but it was difficult because as a director, I can't be there
Right.
in the studio with them for the recording. So that was sort of a challenge that we navigated throughout the course of the project, and also learning to communicate exactly what you're looking for, so that the people that you trust can take that and turn it into something great.
Right, right. So you probably were on Zooms all the time, and how long, what kind of period was that? A month or 2 month period to
For the music or for the
for
animation?
the whole thing, the animation?
So the animation began in December, and we went all the way till April. And as you can imagine, I have some folks who are in Asia, some folks who are in Europe, who are 6, 7, 13 hours ahead of us.
Right.
So that was sort of a difficult thing as well, where you have to sort of sit down and be very cognizant of when you're sending out notes and making sure those notes aren't reaching somebody right before they go to bed.
Right.
Even though it's only 9 in the morning for where you are. So there was a special kind of rapport that you have to develop with your team
Sure.
to ensure that you're constantly communicating in a way that doesn't feel so staggered.
Absolutely.
And of course, that's really difficult, especially when there are so many different people. But I was so fortunate to have a team that was willing and open, and most importantly, patient with me. And I think I couldn't be more grateful.
Right, right on, right on. Was this your first animated film?
So this was my first animated film with a team. I am a self-taught animator, and I have been making animations for as long as I've been able to, use a digital tablet.
Wow.
And so this was the first time translating those skills into a fully fledged production. And of course, there's sort of imposter syndrome that comes with that. But once again, I can't state enough the patience and the understanding I had from this team, and from my producer Chloe, who sort of gave me the support and the confidence to take the time to learn when I needed to learn, but also to give me a voice when it was time to really get down to brass tacks.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Who were some of your inspirations, or what are some of your inspirations as an animator? What films did you see, or what animators have you aspired to be?
I think, like so many others, and I think you can sort of see a lot of his sort of artistic DNA in the film. I have to give a lot of credit to Hayao Miyazaki. But of course, I also have deep influences from a wide variety of places, not just in the animation or specifically the feature animation world. A lot of my love goes to both fantasy films and monster films.
So, this process, what did you learn about yourself while making this film?
I in a strange sort of way, it really comes down to how much you can really handle in one go. I know that isn't as maybe artistically enchanting, but there was a very real lesson when wearing so many hats and trying to kind of spread yourself so thin that you're in every place at once. And it was really important to me by the end of the production to make sure I was putting my time and my focus in the areas that needed it the most, and then giving the trust to the fantastic artists and people on my team to really pick it up in the other spots. And once again, it's not as necessarily artistically exciting of an answer, I'm afraid, but I think it's just as important, especially in the animation world, which is so frequently cursed by crunch culture and really intensive line of work that, once again, does not pay well, and that's something that has to change. But it also has to change you have to be cognizant of yourself and know where your boundaries are.
Absolutely, and it's a team. I mean, all
Yeah.
of filmmaking is a team-making effort. You
Of
know,
course,
it's a,
yeah.
you know, and that's the beauty of it. You know, each person is lending their own gifts to bring
Exactly.
this project to full fruition. So
Yeah.
it's a really, really beautiful thing. So, so also a lesson that you learned during this process that you would like to share with others.
I think the thing that comes to mind was sort of a larger lesson I had learned through my time making this project, but it was something I really had heard before the project even started, and that was, don't try to overwork yourself with the script and try and think, well, what will audiences like? What will land best with audiences? Obviously, that's an important part of what you should be thinking about, but it's not nearly as important as what matters to you and to the other members, the other creative leads on your team. If it speaks to you, it's going to speak to somebody else on that in the world, in that audience, and that became a really important sort of litmus test for creative decisions. Is this something that feels right for the film and feels right for me, or is this something that we're doing to appease something that's outside of the film? And you have to negotiate that. Obviously, it's within reason. You have to sort of decide what you're willing to sort of commit to as a director. And when you do commit to something wholeheartedly and it results in a positive audience reception, it not only feels like a complete sort of validation creatively, but it also sort of feels like a nice personal validation.
Sure.
That there are people out there that love the same stories that you do and love the same sort of characters that you do.
Sure, absolutely. And can you talk about what it's like to share that passion and enroll such a large team into that vision and making sure that everybody's heading in the same direction? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. Once again, this is with the sort of asterisk that it was a remote production, so you can only do so much through a screen, and so it was important for me to, regularly sort of check in and say, this is where I think we want the character to be coming from in this specific shot or in this specific scene, and that is something that you regularly communicate to the point that you and the artist that you're working for, it's not a one-way street. You guys are now on the same page creatively, and now you get to have these really rewarding discussions, where you say, as a director right now, I'm getting stumped on exactly how to embody this this emotion or this characterization. And then you have your animator who has the talent and the skill to say, well, maybe we could try X, Y, and Z. And with that, you get these really, really inspiring conversations that come out of it.
So tell us, what can we look for from you next as a filmmaker, and where can we follow you?
I'm currently working on another short film. I'm just about to wrap that up. I worked as the production designer and the animation supervisor, so I got to continue honing my skills. That's really what I want to continue doing over the next 2-3 years, is continue to make shorts, continue to develop my portfolio. And so I hope you'll be able to see my monsters and my creatures again on the screen. And you can find me on Instagram at s.kim.xi. I don't post as much there yet, but now that I'm going to be working on my own personal projects, I hope to continue to share, and also as well as we continue to get to the end of our festival circuit with Gail, we'll hopefully be able to post it online for everybody to see. So hopefully in the coming year, you can search up Gail on YouTube and you'll be able to find us there.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today. It was a pleasure talking with you about your film, and best of luck with it and everything you're doing.
Thank you so much.